Thank you so much for inviting me here to participate in the SIGA Summit on Female Leadership in Sport. For me, it's both an honour and a privilege to be asked to contribute, and specifically to briefly share my journey as a business leader, the lessons I've learned along the way, and more recently, on my experience in sport. As a kid growing up in the north of England in the early 1960s, I had the unusual, but now I realise invaluable experience of having a mother who worked full-time. Whilst all the other kids at my school typically had a mum at home and a dad at work, my mum went back to work as Inspector of Taxes almost immediately after I was born. And so it was that I had my very own role model of a successful working woman, except at the time, it was something that often made me feel decidedly odd amongst my peers, rather than lucky. Fast forward to my teenage years, and there was no doubt that my mum's experience as a working woman had influenced me, probably subtly at the time, to believe that any opportunity was open to a woman. And it's now no surprise, as I look back on my career, to find that I often took on roles that were not, shall we say, the norm for women. But to me, having a role model that told me otherwise, impossible became nothing. In the early days of my career, I was obsessed with business and the financing of business. And that curiosity drove me to explore careers in commerce. My first role as a store management trainee with the retailer Marks & Spencer gave me a tremendous grounding in customer service and the crucial value of an organisation that looked after its people. The importance of being customer focused is even more valid today than it was then, given that customers have so much more choice, but even more so, the lesson that the engagement of your people is one of the biggest differentiators of the success of any organisation. Winning the hearts and minds of your people in good times and not so good times is what, for me, often separates exceptional and average business leaders. A change of direction into the car industry with a company called Lex in the early 1980s saw me face some of my biggest business challenges. I learned how to read a P&L and a balance sheet, or rather I was forced to learn after I made some fundamentally poor decisions that showed I didn't really understand the difference between cash and profit. During that time, I had a boss who promoted me into a role which I arguably did not have the experience for. And although not easy initially, it was his support and mentorship that not only ensured I survived, but thrived. Another great lesson. As a business leader, I think it's our role not only to take a risk on people we see as having talent and potential, but to support, coach, and mentor them when we give them that opportunity. There's no doubt in my mind that without his mentorship, I would never have succeeded in building the business career I have today, which reinforces exactly why the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Programme is an important initiative to support the development of women in sports leadership. The power of football is unique. It's the world's biggest sport with over 3.5 billion fans. It's an opportunity to be a force for good in society. And arguably, the opportunity in football is unique. The opportunity to lead the board of one of the biggest and oldest football associations in the world was an opportunity that I relished. I never really thought about being the first woman in its 160-year history. I thought about the experience I bring, the opportunity it gave me to shape the future, and the personal development that I could get along the way. It was only when the appointment was announced and I saw the reaction that I realised the significance of being a woman and the extent to which I might inspire other young girls. But if there's one piece of advice that I wished I could have given my younger self, it would be that my attitude to the tough times that I face will be a critical factor in determining just how successful I can be as a leader. It remains for me to commend SIGA for its efforts to promote good governance, sports integrity, and greater gender equality in sport, and to hope that you all enjoy the conference.